Whoa, this is really exciting and really very stressful. And this isn't the sort of thing I think that, we're conditioned to do. Ordinarily, what would happen is that, we would have I would have an extraordinarily controlled and scripted presentation. I'd know exactly what it is I'm going to present on the screen. I'd rehearsed it 1,000 times. Tonight, there is none of that. So because, I'm 52, so I'm basically squeezing 52 years worth of life into 20 minutes of just not breathing for 20 minutes sort of thing. Anyway, so here we go. Image on the left, mum and dad, John Albert Morris, Cecilia Mary Morris. Dad born before the war, mum born just after the war. Mum is from Glasgow, dad is from a place called Hinckley in Leicestershire. That's where they met. Mum travelled from Glasgow. She left with her friend Isabel Sanders, and they basically moved to Leicester in somewhere when they were about 18 or 19, and they basically worked on the buses in the city centre in Leicester, formed this incredible relationship. Mum had an affair, had another boy that was basically my half-brother, then met my dad. My dad was this guy that kind of grew up in the middle of this sort of nothing really happening sort of town called Hinckley. They bonded, they loved each other really well. That's 1968, say. 1977, Silver Jubilee sort of year, that kind of time. My mum had this incredible idea about how life should look and how the family should look. So this is a photograph that mum basically constructed, and that's the first time I wore a bow tie. You probably can't see, but this is my sister. She's clearly not enjoying it. We've become estranged over time. So this is kind of weird thing that this photograph said, but it's all about in this photograph. For me, it's my dad, and I guess there's another couple of slides about this. It's just about how I have over time started to kind of play back as a kind of reflection how I am and who I am, and this idea that I might be an imposter within a room full of extraordinary people. And by the way, 180 architects have done this. Your stats, 180 architects, 50 events, 8 countries. So I am number 181, 182, 183. And there's my dad, and he's from Hinckley. And then cut to the image over there, that's about 15 years later. We were as a family this firebrand, this energy. We were like a nuclear fusion. We were like this we were the punk band, we were the lead singer, we were the kind of the percussion, we were the strings, we were the orchestra. When we went in the room, lots of drinking, chaos was how this thing. So I've got this kind of totally kind of born into me kind of energy about people. This is my dad on the left-hand side. This is Ellie. I might cry a little bit. This is Ellie, who I got married to, and Dad was this amazing thing. And then he died last year, and sort of seeing the difference between that in 2016 and that in sort of 2022, say, it was kind of the way in which kind of life takes everything away from you, and you drop, and it erodes, and it kind of pulls you apart, and you're left with your memories, sort of thing. It's really, really kind of a really big thing for me. I've spent a lot of time just thinking about what Dad was and what he represented to me. I've got a sense of massive guilt about, how he died. He basically, he had polio as a child. His left leg was a bit shorter than the right leg. That meant his hip went, so he had a hip replacement 15 years ago. Then his other knee kind of caved in. He had an operation on his knee. He went into hospital. He never came out. He was in the system for 3 years. He fell out of bed. He had vascular dementia. He broke his hip, and then he died of COVID. And that was his last 3 years. And it's to me, that's so extraordinary. And the hands, and I'll see if I can read this, and honestly, it won't be that morbid. So Mum always loved Dad's hands, and always, I need my glasses wherever they are. Have I got them? No, I forgot them. Oh, there you go, sorry. Here we go. It just goes to show you how unrehearsed this is. Mum always loved Dad's hands and always recalled how she fell for him because of the strength they pervade. She always talked about how big they were, how protected she felt when he held her in them, how small her hands were when in his. Dad's hands shaped his work and work shaped his hands. Dad was a grafter. He built things, he fixed things, he painted things. He never stopped. His hands were his greatest asset, strong, muscular, calloused. And then this is a sort of bit of prose that I've stolen from someone else. In his passing, Dad gave me these hands. Fingers muscular like his, the same folds of skin like squinted eyes looking back at me whenever I wash my hands in the kitchen sink, coming back to the kitchen sink. I wash, these are the fingernails, square and flat, like 10 small mirrors I look into and see him. His same whirls of hair near my wrists, magnetic lines that pull me back to him. These are his knuckles, rising and falling like hills. These are his veins and his pulse at my wrist and under my watch. This is his skin, brown, marked, a story told. So within that, I've got this sort of dad and mum just never stopped working. So like, it was just work. Nothing ever stopped. We were always working, always moving, always decorating, always wallpapering, doing the allotment, pickling stuff, making wine. It just never stopped. They had this kind of incredible, like, basic working life. Dad was a panel beater, sprayed cars. Mum just basically filled in ledgers for a local authority. They had perfunctory lives, and at the end of it, they had a family, and at the end of that, they had work to do, and it never stopped. And somehow that's part of who I am. You know, I've got this sort of incredible kind of work ethic. It's my genetics, it's my DNA, just to keep doing stuff over and over and over again. And in some ways, that's what the practice is. My practice is effectively kind of a version of me, which is just making stuff. Keep making it, keep doing it, exploiting the opportunities, the 1,000 monkeys and a typewriter. It's like that sort of thing. Just keep going and going and going. And somehow, brilliance comes out of it. And I think, you know, I think I take my practice to the limits. I think I break them. I think I push them into stress. There's a couple of people here, you know what I'm talking about. It's this constant energy and effort to make stuff happen. And then I went to, then there's this whole story about, you know, how I got here. So that's Paul Monaghan, this one here, looking very slim, and this is Simon Alford with no hair. At the time I met him, he had lots of hair. So this is going back to 92 or 93. I didn't even want to be an architect, by the way. So originally, I kind of like, my mum, I've got this story about finding my mum naked in front of a heat lamp in her bedroom in the sort of semi-detached building. She had like psoriasis, and she was basically dealing with herself, you know, kind of deal with her skin condition. I bumped into her and it was really awkward, and she got dressed really hurriedly, and we had a conversation. She said, "You've got to go to university." And I'd never even thought about it, and I was 16 years of age, never thought about this sort of thing and this opportunity. And then from that, I kind of thinking, what should I do? Ended up going to Leicester to do an art foundation, and then didn't know what to do after that. Didn't do very well. I flunked it, but I found myself, and I ended up doing landscape architecture in Thames Poly, which became Greenwich University. And halfway through the first year, I thought, there's no way I'm going to be a landscape architect. I can't do Latin. I didn't study the classics. I'm not really sure about sort of plant species. So I begged the guys to put me into architecture. And, you know, 1990, I was like literally on my knees, can I please do architecture? I didn't have any of the core disciplines to do it. They put me in. I did 3 years. I aced it. I got bronze medal, put forward for the bronze medal. I think I came second in the year. The guy that won it was Guy Dickinson, who's amazing. And then I went to university. We all went to university, and I met these guys, and then I worked with them for 8 years. So I spent 10 years, 2 years at diploma, and 8 years as an employee with AHMM. And AHMM were the kind of perfect, I didn't realize it then, were the perfect organization to basically unlock the skills that I had, which is this idea to keep doing stuff. And they introduced this thing called optioneering. At the time when I was in school, I never heard of this thing, which is basically keep doing loads of versions of the same thing, and at some point, the one that you want is going to happen. So optioneering, that's what we do. As a practice, that's what we do. And these are the amazing kind of moments in practice where, because you kind of unlock it and you kind of remove the dam, that everybody's like working, everybody's trying, you just sort of push it. It's like it's really imperfect. It takes a lot of time. You lose a lot of money. But ultimately, magic happens. And there's so many brilliant projects which have come out of that process that I can't even begin to fathom how we even got there. And again, you can't take, you can take the boy out of Leicester, but you can't take Leicester out of the boy. That's where I was born from. So it's this idea that pinch my skin. I run a practice of 70 people with a dad who was a panel beater and mum that just added maths up in a kind of ledger, analog, and we've got this amazing stuff coming out of it. And I really have no idea how we managed to get there, but it's like this whole idea of people, energy, passion, let it happen, let it flow, serendipity, and the joy and the whatever. And alongside that, as well as just being a really brilliant bunch of people who are designing stuff, there's a whole thing about culture, about the practice being number one project. It's project number 1, it's project number 100, it's project number 1000, which is how to make being in practice the thing. It's the most important thing. It's a thing we all pass through. Buildings are incidental to the actual event, which is practice and being together with people. And bearing in mind, COVID, pandemic, no one's actually coming in anymore. We've just moved to, it's like literally trying to get people into this thing and enjoy it. And then our old place over in Underwood Street, not far from here, we used to occupy the street every Friday. The neighbours got really angry. They stole our bench. We used to play Frisbee. And at the same time, in the same space, we're doing really serious stuff. Lots of BIM, lots of architecture, lots of technical stuff. And then from that, we invented this idea called London on the beach in Venice, where I married Ellie, a guy called Phil Coffey, from Coffey Architects. We came up with this idea of, we called it Laxit, which was this idea of the anti-Brexit. So as we're coming out of Europe, let's go back into Europe. Let's prove that you can sort of take London and engineer and architecture and design back into Europe. So we ended up with this sort of thing called London On. So it's Turner Architects, or Turner Works, May, Gort Scott, ourselves, Haptic, and who's the other one? Us. That's it. And so, like, this is a scene in 2000 and what would it be, in 2018 or something. We got everyone on Waterloo Bridge. It's like 100 people, this stupid idea on a beach drinking lots of kind of rosé, and we thought, let's get people together. The whole idea about it is you basically, one person from each practice, 6 practices, young person gets a chance to work with 5 other young people. We throw them into a city with kind of almost no brief, look at the city and through a London lens, and then bring it back to 100 people and exchange that kind of moment of kind of real life action and research. So, and the other thing is that each of the people or each of the practices are leading the group, so you kind of baton it through. So our one, which I'm really proud of, is and coming to this idea of being vegan and into food and waste and so forth. Ourselves and Turner Works, we came up with this idea that we would travel to Paris, take these, like, we had about, what was it, like 15 or 20 people who went with us or whatever. Ellie, you came along. And we would look at Paris. So we look at Paris through the lens of food, and this idea that food has a kind of extraordinarily kind of massive footprint problem. Waste, carbon, people, ethics, morality, treating people well, all that sort of thing. Let's try to work out how to look at Paris and let's try to use Paris as a lens to look at food. So we thought, what's the best way to do it? We find the most basic, quintessential backstreet restaurant, bistro thing in Paris. We convinced them to allow us to basically put a load of tables together, have a banquet around the thing, and that we could draw all over their tablecloths and take the tablecloths with us. And they said, yeah, it's absolutely fine, monsieur. So we basically mapped the entire dinner. So it's like a 3-hour dinner. How are we doing for time, by the way? Are we good? 10? Are we halfway? We're good? I'll just keep going. So we've got loads of slides left. So we mapped this thing physically, and it was this really extraordinary thing where we're sort of trying to work out how knives and forks and plates and spoons and food and stains move around the table. And then at the back of that, we were thinking, well, what do we do with all this sort of knowledge, this kind of moment where we've really experienced and kind of been in the belly, I suppose, of what Paris and food is about, because obviously Paris is known and France is known for it. So we said, what we should do, we'll take one plate of food, which is a bowl of French onion soup, built in a kind of French onion soup, French way, which uses beef as a stock, and we'll dissect it and we'll map it. So we mapped a bowl of French onion soup, and if you think about a bowl of French onion, it's this idea, this is a peasant dish. It's really simple. It's like it could be anywhere. The problem with a bowl of French onion soup is it has a global network, has a global kind of support chain in order to be able to deliver. You know, where does your salt come from? Where does your sugar come from? Where does the pepper come from? Where do your onions come from? Where does the stock come from? It's global. So a bowl of French onion soup, which you might take as being a very simple thing, has a massive carbon footprint. So how do we sort of deal with it better? We got caught up in I think it's Oslo Biennale about degrowth, and we saw actually what we could do is go back and play back the story of our visit to France, the dissected or disconnected or kind of whatever bowl of onion soup, and we made a saucepan of French onion soup, but in a vegan way. And we used every single thing. So we kind of, we had this amazing kind of cloth. We kind of stained it with onion. We turned onion skins into bowls. We wrote a book, and it was amazing. And from that has emerged this idea that if you get people together, this sort of serendipitous idea about getting people in the room a little bit like now, magic happens. The kind of moment where you're kind of like multiple interfaces, your thing you just said there, turn around and talk to someone. We've been driving this idea continuously as a practice. Well, I certainly have as well. And so all these other events, take place where we have some incredible people coming to speak to us in our office with an audience coming, and you gift it out, and you learn so much from this sense of people being in the room talking about things which are incredibly important to people. So, you know, the idea of a super crit where you invite outsiders to come in and see a crit of your own project, obviously NDAs and all that sort of thing dealt with, but it's kind of quite interesting to have a third eye when you're looking at just basically a project and having your people, you know, talking about, you know, playing back the onion soup, people in the LFA talking about how to deal with kind of homelessness, and then, you know, how to feed the city. So these are really big things. And then, obviously, in 2017, overnight, we went vegan. And obviously, I don't know if you've heard that I've been vegan, but I have been vegan. So therefore, I've been a consistently committed vegan now for the best part of 6 years. I know it's a difficult thing for you to hear, but it's a really important thing that we're trying to do here. And I think it's this thing that once you go vegan, it's like taking the pill in the Matrix. You see everything in a completely different way. And it's very difficult to try to describe it, but it's like every single thing, such as, you know, putting a chocolate on a book in a room is like, oh my God, I can't believe you did that sort of thing. It's like, it's that sort of thing. It's like, it's so bad. And it changes how you think about your t-shirts, what you wear, about consumerism, about capitalism, about growth, about all sorts of things. It's like, it stops it. That's why I look a little bit like what I look like, which is like, you don't look like I've tried to dress up for tonight. I really have, but it's like all I have. I don't have spare clothes. I don't have a suit. I don't have a tie anymore. I don't have anything. I don't buy anything. I'm literally living, wearing it all out, and if it wears out, I fix it, sort of thing. There's something about being vegan which I think has just unlocked that thing. It's always been in the heart of me. And the other thing I do, which you might not know, but it's a really important part of me, is like food, vegan, and riding bikes. And I ride every single day. Like today, I've done about 50 kilometers of riding. I'll do it again tomorrow. I'll do it the day after, the day after, the day after. I cover around 300, 400, 200 kilometers every single week. Apparently, I'm in the top 1% of the entire multi-million community of Strava users for activity on Strava, which is mental. It's full of athletes in there, by the way. The reason why, you know, and it's like this idea that's like meditative. Get up in a bike, go out. I don't go around a park. I go into Edgware Road. I go into Euston Road. I cycle around Notting Hill. I'm doing it at pace. I'm trying to keep an average above 30 kilometers an hour through rush hour every single day, dicing with death. It's like this kind of catharsism every moment just to get over stuff and get it out and sort of get the anxiety of the day before. It's like meditation. It's my yoga. I do a lot of swimming as well. And I'm like really like continuously on the move. And I think it's kind of a really important part of who I am. The other thing about being on a bike is that you meet a lot of people. You end up having conversations in a slightly different way. You're not kind of in a formal thing where it's like, oh, turn around and speak to someone. You're on a bike and you've got this thing flowing, which is kind of incredible. And so, you know, here's one, for example. So this guy here, this is Will Lee. He's an odd little character from AHMM. There he is again. He's this amazing person that I met when I was at AHMM back in sort of 99 or something. He's about yo tall, he's got no hair, and he's amazing. And another guy called Jeremy Young, who basically built my daughter's bike for her 10th birthday last year. We went on this journey, and we basically got a train to Turin. Again, this is not, you know, we do this all the time. So this particular one, we got to Turin, and then we cycled over the Alps to Nice. It was like a 700 or 800 kilometers across gravel thing. The thing about it is that you feel incredibly kind of inspired. It's like this idea that you push yourself, you push the bike, there's nothing else, there's no carbon being expended. You are literally in connection with a rolling landscape, totally connected with what's happening at that time. It makes you feel like a hero. It makes you feel like a king standing on a mountain in weird bibs with your shirt off, don't care, no one can see you sort of thing. I feel like it's extraordinary, and I've met so many people. So one building on here. So this is, I'm not going to talk about the building, but the point of the building is this building wouldn't have happened if I didn't ride bikes. So the story is riding across France a lot. So you start in London, you go to Cannes. It's a 6-day event, and this event is called Cycle to MIPIM. Lots and lots of people are there, and it's like this really weird where you're kind of placing people together. And I happen to be on the front of the peloton with Nick Searle of Argent and Roger Madeleine of Argent talking about, hey, you've got to let young people, young practices, this is going back nearly 10 years ago, have a go at designing the next office because we are the occupiers of the future of your workplaces. So he gave us a small project, which effectively, it was sort of this bit of the project. He said, well, yeah, do a little feasibility down there, like a little kind of like co-worky thing, like, you know, whatever. Turned out to be a 250,000 square foot, 70 million pound new build HQ office for Google DeepMind and many other people. And it's like it's the typology breaker, I think, that we've done in terms of thinking about how projects work, talking about breakages. I've broken 2 fingers, I've broken my arm, I've just broken my wrist, I've had multiple kind of fractures, I've kind of yanked this and whatever, being on a bike, but there's something about the fragility of the human body in those moments where you're hurtling down a hill and the resilience of your body to be able to sort of rebuild it. And this one here, the top left, this isn't me, this is a guy called John Norden. I just thought I'd just put that in there. He was talking about bikes, so he basically prepared. So he's like this kind of like slightly kind of rotund chap. I really love him. He's kind of as wide as he is tall sort of thing, but slimming down because of all the bike riding. And he said, look, what I'm going to do, because he's really into circularity, I'm going to ride to Amsterdam. I'm going to go to the Amsterdam Circularity Conference, and I'm going to ride there. Do you want to come? I said, I can't quite fit in, but you go for it, John. Leg 1 of about 6 legs, he basically rode into a boy that ran out in the street, fell over, and dislocated his index finger. So that's a real photograph of his finger that had folded across, and that was it. Gone, sort of thing. Anyway, as you can see from the middle one, married. I didn't realize when I was taking the x-ray that, obviously metal comes across in a certain way. I'm married to that person over there. We got married on a beach. We got married in California. We got married in LA. We were on a beach in front of Frank Gehry's little house there. And that's where we kind of came up with the idea of London on. It was like, it's an epic kind of bubble. And out of that, Ellie and I have been doing these incredible things, as well as turning vegan. It's trying to, through vegan and through this kind of continuous, energy to sort of do stuff and make stuff. You started off, and I kind of joined. This is me kind of making coffee with some purple fingernails. So we ended up with this little coffee shop on Columbia Road, which is all about sort of vegan stuff and architecture on the street. And then Ellie moved this to where we live now, which is on Hackney Road, which is this thing called Supernature. And then from Supernature, we've just moved it into our office. So this whole connection around food, it was this bubbling thing in the background. So, we're writing a lot. We're thinking about architecture, we're thinking about the high street, and we're definitely thinking about how to change systems through the way that we function and to demonstrate that to people. At the back of that, or kind of going simultaneously, is this thing called Fight Club. And so Fight Club is this idea that if you get a load of people together in a certain degree of kind of specialism, so we've got the engineers, we've got the planners, we've got the clients, we've got the architects and so forth, put them in a room and say, how are you going to demonstrate and fix the world? How are you going to demonstrate how you're doing it? Talk about social injustice, talk about the climate. It's been epic, and it's been a thing that we've been flowing through, and the response that we've had to that has been extraordinary. So everyone's saying, the name is really bad, and we don't really like the way that it kind of, what the connotations, but actually it's been this extraordinary event. And we had one recently where we went mixed martial arts, cage fighting, where we had fashion, product design, furniture design, architecture and engineering all in the room, so cross-discipline, kind of having a go and having a debate about how to fix it. Then, dial it back again. 2020, are we good for time? 2020, there was obviously, we all know about the pandemic, and I found myself being the only person in the office at that time, so like 60-odd people, everyone goes overnight, everyone's now working from home, so like 60 new businesses in 60 new kind of kitchens and whatever, bedrooms. And I was left by myself, and I was thinking, I was there every day, and I was thinking, this absence of people, but actually there was still this kind of resonating thing about all the models that we'd made. I could walk around the entire, kind of landscape of our office and almost see every single's hand. I knew the name of everyone that had worked on every single model. So, and it seemed to me really important. That's the thing that we'd lost. It's like you forget. It's like, technology and the internet and all those sorts of things are brilliant, but actually being in a space and just smelling it, the blood, the tears, the sweat, the kind of mistakes, that's what's kind of really important. So I drew this image, and then we made it. And so we kind of got it took a week to kind of, obviously I'm really busy, so it's like a week when I'm being really, in meetings on an iPad, and you can still carry models up and down a staircase. We erected this whole thing, and I kind of stood in the middle of it. Ellie helped me a little bit as well, and it was this really extraordinary kind of moment of like really kind of deep, kind of intense feeling about, this is, from one part of our world, this is the product of about 15 or 16 years worth of design in a room, in it, thinking about it, in the pandemic. And I'm actually rattling through this. This is really good, so I might just slow down a bit, because we're good, aren't we, for time? This I've been, continuously kind of vexed and influenced and interested in people. The number one project for me is practice. As we said at the beginning, we've got a studio in London, we've got a studio in Copenhagen. I'm constantly interested in about like dichotomies and difference and the richness of ideas and contradictions sort of playing across how we do stuff. And, you know, business is difficult. We all know how difficult a recession is, a war is, a kind of an energy crisis, the cost of living crisis. It's massively problematic. So we decided during all of that we should open a restaurant, because that's a really kind of good, stable kind of business that's going to work, isn't it? During that, clearly not. As you can see, because no one's in it. We thought that the restaurant would be somehow a kind of partner to the architecture that we're doing. So how do we get people in? How do we get people to kind of like think about what we're doing, which is a hyper-seasonal, low-carbon, ultra-local, plant-based, zero waste, and celebration of food thing, which is good for you. And if every time you eat in a restaurant, your carbon footprint is dropping, by the way. It's like, it's that good. At the same time, it brings people together. We know that food is a very social thing. So the food and the architecture sitting side by side. So through this door, sorry, I'm going on this screen, but through that door is my office. The door slides backwards and forwards. Members of the public can come into this door and they can walk into the office. So we could be having like a workshop. People could just have a kind of vegan whatever and walk through into the space and be in the workshop that we're having at that given time. You know, people like British Land and Lend-Lease are all in there. But the people also, coming back to this idea of people, the people in this space are also this extraordinarily gifted bunch of people. Honestly, it's like, and the extension of that, and suddenly, as for me, it's like seeing the work of the practice, the way that we think about materials, the way that we think about kind of producing things. It's happening in a kind of like, you know, simultaneous or parallel universe, which generally you start to think about as the same. So back to this idea of veganism, you know, it's not about let's sort fashion out, let's sort transport out, let's sort architecture out. It's like, let's kind of sort it all out is the idea. So everything is the same. It's the same problems. It's the same problem about where the materials come from, how you use them, where the waste goes, what energy goes into producing them. And so what we started doing that to try and sort of, you know, bring that back to the practice is that we have this thing called the midweek, which is a moment where you turn CPD. So you've got like, you know, inverted roofs and, you know, no disrespect, but, you know, specification people coming in and the thing about the kind of the kitchen worktop. We've got those events happening. You know, in a busy environment, it's quite difficult to get people motivated by that. So we think, well, I'll tell you what we'll do. We'll feed everyone. We'll have a kind of celebratory dinner. We'll sit around the kind of this enormous thing. We'll throw everyone in. We'll have help yourself buffet, and we'll talk carpet tiles sort of thing. So that happens. So that's like our Wednesday thing. And what we're really keen to do is to basically open that to have, you know, anyone that's listening here. It's like it's an open call for people just to come along and be part of that thing. And we really kind of want to open it up to our community. We moved the office from Underwood Street, which is in Shoreditch. It's almost finished, into Hackney. So we're on Mare Street. The big thing here was about kind of putting the office right onto the high street, right in the middle of chaos. I mean, Mare Street is like this incredible urban, real space with people walking up and down with stuff in cans inside paper bags, standing, spitting at the screen in the big shop windows while you're doing a presentation. You're really trying to impress your client with this guy like breathing against the window sort of thing. That's what we're doing. So this is happening just here. So that's, you know, this is like everything happening. It's the same character as well. I'm in these meeting rooms all the time and I see the same people walking backwards and forwards. But, you know, in the basement we've opened up, we've got this like incredible kind of workshop, we've got this kind of materials archive, so we've like really invested in trying to get people back into the office and celebrate the kind of act of architecture. On the ground floor, so we've got 12,000 square foot, we've got a restaurant in it, we share it with a company called Beyond the Box, who are this kind of not-for-profit organization, charity, basically outreaching to school kids to tell them and teach them what architecture in the urban environment looks like and how you work with it. We've got a company called what they're called now, name's gone, just about to join us, who are a photography studio. We might even have the contractors who built the thing, might even desk share with as well. So we have 5 businesses, as well as everyone else flowing through, as well as members of the public in the studio all the time. This space is around 3,000 square foot. It flows into early space. It's kind of empty for most of the time. We do crits in it and so forth, and then every now and again, you fill it for something else which has got nothing to do with architecture, but everything to do with bringing people together. So we have, you know, events, we have debates, we have discussions. Last night we had a concert. We had the So Far London event. We had sort of 3 individuals. We had, you know, guitars and bands and pianos and people singing and lots of wine and energy, and it was the most amazing thing. And you suddenly realise, as a boy from Leicester, born in 1970, I've got my name in lights on a high street in Hackney.
It took actually almost 30 minutes.
Was it 30 minutes? Yeah. Oh, wow. I thought I was doing really well. I thought I was on it.
Yeah.
Right, okay.
But we'll keep the interview.
I thought that was 15. Right.
The interview to 2 questions that I would like to ask you, because you said, and I was very impacted by that, kind of from the very beginning, you had that that work ethics of keep doing, keep making, keep going, never stopping.
Yeah.
I wonder, what does make you stop someone?
As in when they're designing?
When
when
you're not designing, you are with your bike for so many kilometers.
I don't know really. It doesn't feel like it ever stops. I mean, my days are just, I kind of think about it. I was thinking about today, so just to give an indicator. So I woke up with a slight hangover because we had the So Far London event last night. The alarm goes up at 6. I'm thinking, I'm going to have a lie-in until 7:15. Get up, do 50 kilometers on the bike, come back, have a coffee, feeling like I've stolen a moment. Then I'm into meetings continuously, preparing for this as well, having to basically do the whole thing again, which I did yesterday, and I realized it was terrible. So this is version 2, which is my best version. You judge it. Then back into the office, multiple meetings, things flowing in all the time from everywhere. Then having to go to pick up my daughter from school, take her swimming lessons, whilst taking 3 meetings on a Teams thing at the same time, and then coming back to see you. It just doesn't stop. There isn't a sort of, it's just a continuous cycle of things just spinning. And I'm just hoping I can still come out this sane.
You didn't mention, but I think your bike was stolen for a couple of times.
Yes, I've had all my bikes stolen.
2 bikes stolen.
Yeah, no,
maybe
5.
Maybe that's a sign of
5 bikes.
5 stolen.
Yeah.
Maybe the world saying,
someone is saying,
slow
down, stop it, do something else, sort of thing. Maybe.
But even with that injury, what did you do for kind of sport? It looks like sport.
Oh no, I rode. I just rode one-handed.
Okay.
For a while, and then gradually worked out how to get the arm on.
Trying to find how did you say that not barriers, but the limitations of the body and how fragile.
Just switching, and it's still like not right, but it's like, I've got loads of metal in there and screws and stuff, and so I've been, I started swimming and it felt like I had this kind of big brick lump in hand, and then gradually it starts to work, and now it's like I was there today just thinking about it. It's beautiful.
It's very nice.
The body is a brilliant tool.
It's also very nice that Ellie was part of your talk, and that would have been some of the topics where I think that many things had happened lately, also with her in your life.
I blame her for everything, in a way.
And there is one last question that I would like to ask you is, with the last, you mentioned AHMM, and then you had a partnership which ended at some point, and you mentioned at the previous conversation that we had that affected many people from your team. How did you deal with that moment? Kind of it's not only a difficult moment for you, but also have what you do and what you decide going to have an influence and going to affect so many other people.
Yeah, it was. We're still dealing with it. If I'm honest with you, it hasn't quite sort of gone away. But yeah, business and life isn't a perfect thing, and you can't guarantee that things always turn out the way you think they might turn out. In terms of the practice, it was this elastic that just broke, and it just, it was like concurrent with life breaking at that moment. On a personal level, it's like sometimes you just got to think of yourself first, I think, and then you deal with the after effect of all of that. And it has been very difficult, I think, for everyone. There's a couple of people in the room who would attest to that continuously. So, Judith and Harriet over there. It has been difficult, but I think we're in a place where it's starting to feel a bit more sane, a bit more, the difficulties are not now that, but it's now, everything else that's in the world affecting life.
Yeah, there are many topics that you mentioned that I loved personally from the topic, from the talk, also regarding the cycling and talking to possible clients and trying to convince them. Also, cycling so many kilometers feels like it's not doing just for 50 kilometers a day, but this kind of races that you do. So there are lots of nice things, and maybe we can catch up on a couple of topics for the roundtable discussion, if it's okay.
Yeah, great.
Thank you, Joe.
Thank you. Pleasure.
Thank you for the talk.
Pleasure. Thank you.